Howdy, folks. You send an idiot to college, you get an educated idiot. Now, there's a lady, calls herself Dr. So let's find out what her credentials are. Now, on this video that she's making, of course, I haven't even watched the video. I got blocked in the first few minutes. That's because this woman is not professional. See, here's the thing. Mentally ill is not a diagnosis. Her video here is called There's a Fine Line Between Entertainment and Mental Illness. So, of course, Carolina Diamond believes that she has the right to block people on her channel. So do I, absolutely 100%. It's your channel. It is your right, absolutely, to be the autocratic dictator of your own channel. But is it just people who have a different opinion than you? Or people who have a different experience from you? See, if you look at the people that I block on my channel, it's the trolls. They're not actually trying to add anything meaningful or useful. There's a lot of people who type and suggest ideas of things that I've already done. And of course, they're new to my channel, so I try not to be all sorts of pissed off and hateful at them. I don't go blocking them and telling them they're horrible, horrible, horrible creatures. I do, from time to time, let them know that I get that a lot. People in real life are always surprised by the fact that I'm different in real life than I am on the internet. Of course, people who knew me in real life before all of this situation were surprised to see me screaming on the internet because they didn't know me as that person in real life. Now, this lady, of course, mental illness, that's not a diagnosis. Mental illness is not a diagnosis, it's in the DSM 5. There are over 500 different diagnoses in the DSM 5, and mentally ill is not even one of them. Now, in this, while she's typing here, and she's talking about the situation, and they later bring up R. Kelly, but a lot of what they're talking about at this point, she's wanting to talk about Kanye. And of course, she's saying that Kanye West, some crap about him, about how he's a good example of something, and another person who claims to be a doctor. See, we can't verify that any of these people are actually doctors, but they might both be doctors. And of course, they have varying opinions, different opinions. Sometimes you get a C student who's really good at listening. Sometimes you get a C student who thinks because he's a doctor, he's better than everybody else. Puts himself up on that pedestal. He knows better than you, the patient, what's going on. That's resulted in a lot of people that I know that had sustained injuries that were ongoing. Like, for example, my friend Amanda, you guys have heard from her on this channel. You've gotten to even hear about her talking about when she broke her foot and she went to the hospital and she said, my foot's broken. And they told her, well, if it was broken, you wouldn't be walking on it. Didn't even take an x-ray. God, that was smart. I probably shouldn't have stuck my fingers in my eyeballs. But I typed because, she does this a lot. It becomes rhetoric, and it becomes a lot of this stuff is where she'll make it a racist thing, and really you just listen to it going, oh my God, this woman is supposed to be professional, but she just went off on a racial tangent. And of course, that is okay. I go off on tangents on my channel about all the racism, don't I? I don't like racism from black people. I don't like it from white people. But I typed to her, the term mentally ill is horrible. It's worse than calling a black person the N-word. And it absolutely is. If you call a black person the N-word in court, you're going to get in trouble. You call somebody mentally ill, you magically get away with it. Now, this lady, she's like, well, I'm a doctor. I can diagnose somebody as mentally ill. No, the fuck you can't. Mentally ill is not a diagnosis. I've got access to the DSM-5 right now. I've got internet at my fingertips. All right, that wasn't true. Now I have the internet at my fingertips. So she wanted to get angry at me like I was a horrible person. We ain't going to have this. We ain't going to have this. All right, well, then we won't have that. It doesn't make it any less true. If you call a black person the N word in court, you're getting in a lot of trouble. You call a black person the N word in public, people are not going to be too happy with you. You call somebody mentally ill in a courtroom, you take away their ability to speak. You take away their credibility. That is exactly what you're doing. And same thing on the street. You're making them out to be a bad guy. And the reason for this is because people go, well, I don't know what they'll do. The term mentally ill could mean anything. It could mean that they're fucking schizophrenic and violent. It could, mean all sorts of fucked up shit. And that's why we need to stick to the diagnosis in specific. If somebody has cerebral palsy, there ain't no reason to treat them like they're mentally ill. No reason for it. See, here's something that the doctors and the courts have a very fucked up racket on. See, the definition according to the courts and the definition according to the doctors are not the same. They're not interchangeable. When you use them interchangeably, when they do not have the same definitions, you are going to inevitably catch people in the crossfire, which is what it becomes. Now, there's a lot of doctors out there that are up there on their high horse. A lot of ones that are C students still put themselves on that high horse where they're better than everyone else, or they know more than everyone else, or that person who comes in with a high pain threshold and says, I got a broken foot. Oh, no, you don't. I'm a doctor. I know better than you, without actually looking. And of course, that's the situation with this lady. She's not willing to look. She just wants to judge. She just wants to say, oh, no, automatically you're whatever category she wants to put me in, she's the doctor, right? I don't see her credentials, and I don't have to see her credentials. Just like this other, actually, I guess there's a couple of people on here who are claiming to be doctors. But here's one, Unique Lemonade typed, hello, doctor, you're looking cute. It's been a long time. That's something you really have to pay attention to as a guy. You have to watch who you say that to. Somebody might find it offensive. Somebody might like it a lot. Some people might consider it sexual harassment. Some people might consider it macking on them at the club. You just never know. Now, she wanted to go off on that for quite a little bit and basically berate me. Now, she didn't do it in a super mean way. But what I typed to her was, when Natalie Bollinger was killed, she and I both became entertainment, and our predators got away by calling us mentally ill. The title of the video, there's a fine line between entertainment and mental illness. That's the title of her video. This is on that subject. And of course, that's nothing she wanted to hear at that point. I suppose if I'd have said it to a white host, it possibly would have been received better. But isn't that racist in and of itself? That I would have to go to a white person? Especially in these times where everything is assumed to be a white person's fault. See, we need to work together. That's the biggest issue. We need BLM to be able to march with, LGBT. We need them to march with those folks who march for battered and missing people and all sorts of, like, all of us who are victims. All of us need to stand up instead of subcategorizing ourselves and arguing over who is more victimized. Because in reality, compared to a black person, Yeah, I live in hell on average. Compared to me, most black people in America have nothing to be afraid of. I mean, if you look at, first of all, the fact that I'm disabled, I'm over twice as likely to get killed by police as a black person. Now, there's also the fact that I'm homeless. And that right there makes me over 260 times more likely to be killed by police than a black person. But you don't want to hear that. You don't want to hear that the term itself, mentally ill, is the reason that people get away with victimizing us. We are number one on these lists specifically because of the label. The label allows them to get away with it, it allows them to destroy your credibility. When I was locked up, most of the people that I was locked up with, regardless of their color, were locked up because they were broke. Most of them were homeless at the time that they were arrested. Most of them. There were lots of other people who got arrested, a lot of people who got arrested for way more heinous crimes that had family and a roof over their head and actual support in person. And it's a big difference. When people say, "Hey, you got white privilege. You don't have to put up with the things that we have to put up with. You don't have to tell your kids. Of course, I don't have any kids. You don't have to tell your kids, hey, if the cops are chasing you, you can't run like your white friends can because they will shoot you." Well, with all due respect, as an autistic person and someone who has Tourette syndrome, both of those come with actions that could become death sentences very quick, fast, and in a hurry, and that has been shown time and again. Me winking and blinking my eyes, I have to worry about people in the general public assuming I'm on drugs, or even worse, assuming that I'm hitting on them if they're a homophobe, or hitting on their girlfriend if they're a domineering asshole, and then I have to worry about violence. But even worse than that, I have to worry about getting shot by the police for it. That's why I need someone there in person when I talk to the police. Now, this lady didn't bother to actually take a look at the situation. She started off with a frame of mind that was sick, that was disturbed, that is, quite frankly, disgusting, and something that obviously doctors should not be saying. The term mentally ill, I want you guys to rehearse this. The term mentally ill is not a diagnosis. Anyway, then of course there's a few people in chat and heard going off about me a little bit, talking a little bit about other stuff, but a lot of going off about me. I type, that's right. If you call someone mentally ill in court, they won't be heard. You call someone the N-word in court, you get in trouble. And she was talking about how stuff equating, and I'm like, it doesn't equate. One is worse. She was saying that one does not equate to the other. That's right. Equate, equal, EQUAL. That's the word there. No, they're not equal. They're not equal. You call somebody the N-word, you're the bad guy. You call somebody mentally ill, they're the bad guy. And you might say, oh, well, people don't just assume that if you're mentally ill that you're the bad guy. No, not necessarily. Most of the time, they just assume that you're in the wrong, not necessarily a bad guy. You just must be in the wrong. You must have perceived it right. You must have opinioned it the wrong way. That's what we get shoved down our throats. That if we don't think the way that you think, that we must be bad people. No, we're neurodivergent. See, you will accept black people who have a different color of skin than you and say, hey, see, we need to be inclusive. Well, yeah, we do need to be inclusive, but not just of people who look differently, but also there are people who do think differently. Being neurodiverse does not make me a bad person any more than being a black person makes them a bad person, or being a white person makes them a bad person. Now, of course, someone wanted me to be blocked from the channel, and she placed me in timeout, which is fine. It's her channel. She's allowed. Anyway, I typed to her, let's see, mentally ill is not a diagnosis. Tourette syndrome is a diagnosis, so is autism. I have both. I also have access to the DSM 5. She also said, I comment once in a while. I've commented on, I think this is the third video I've posted on. The last one was probably 8 months ago. I typed to her, I comment once every 8 months or so because you sometimes show humanity. But oftentimes you are selling an agenda. You think letters behind your name means you know better than those who live it? And that's a very important message. A very important one. So we've got a lot of doctors who they think because they went to school that they know better than those who live it. When it comes to living in a wheelchair, a doctor could tell me all of these little things that they learned in college about, how spinal injuries affect the body, the different chemicals that react with it. You learn about bed sores, you learn about all of this different stuff. But when you want to know about the actual experience, what it's actually like, you don't ask a doctor, you ask somebody in a wheelchair. A lot of these guys, they're not taking the time to listen to their patients. They've already stuffed all people into a specific category. They've already decided. A lot of these folks are not specialists, but they want to speak about fields that they're not even a part of. Now, then we got the issue of doctorates. You can get a doctorate in the United States without being a medical doctor. We have a lot of honorary doctors, have a doctorate of this or a doctorate of that, but they're not medical doctors. Now, then there's the ones who mess around with the brain. These are what's called pseudosciences. And Adolf Hitler was totally into pseudosciences. So was Heinrich Himmler. I mean, these guys thought that, a magic science that could read, whether or not you were a superior Aryan based on the shape of your skull, whether or not you were going to be intelligent or stupid based on the shape of your skull. I mean, they got totally into this occult bullshit. And it's a pseudoscience. Basically, it falls into, the same realm as the original quote-unquote science as far as what we recognize, and that would be alchemy. Although truly, alchemy is not even close to the first science. The Egyptians were scientists. I mean, the ancient Egyptians. We're talking about the Kemet Empire and prior. These were, they were science-based. They were math-based. And we like to think of them as, cavemen. We like to think that everything was accomplished by slave labor. And we got a lot of people who want to play this superiority thing. It's not specific to any one gender. It's not specific to any one age. It's not specific to any sexual preference. It's not specific to any gender. All right? You can be an asshole and be the smartest man on the planet. You can be an absolute sweetheart and be dumb as a fucking stump. No two people are the same. I mean, hell, Natalie Bollinger and her twin sister, Alicia, born just a few minutes apart. They were both extremely different. They kind of looked the same. Now, do I hate this doctor for blocking me on her channel, or a supposed doctor? Do I hate her? Do I think she's a horrible excuse for a human being? No, I don't. I think she's closed-minded and thinks she knows better than everybody else. And of course, she's allowed to think that way. She's even allowed to voice it. And rightfully so. We're in the United States of America. We got the First Amendment, right? Well, that depends. Because, see, that's the thing about calling somebody the N word. You call somebody the N word, they still get the Constitution. Or at least they're supposed to. But you call somebody mentally ill and you've dropped off their chances dramatically. Now, of course, this must be some sort of an insult towards somebody, right? Like, I must be making this video to insult black people or white people or Native American people or some other group of people. I'm sure there's some reason why I'm a horrible person in this. And I'll give you an example of how much this stupidity runs our society. I hold the door open for people here at Starbucks. I don't just do it at Starbucks. Now, one of the few places I don't do that is at the grocery store, because at the grocery store, the door is automatically open. And, you know, I'm a kid at heart. I see those doors, and the first thing that pops into my head is to throw my arms out and say, "Open sesame." I don't do it because I think I have magic powers. I do it because it's entertaining. It makes me feel good. It doesn't hurt anyone. Matter of fact, a lot of people smile. And it's not harmful. It doesn't hurt anyone. But then, of course, just today alone, I've had over 30 contradictions come across my page. Like, I get to read this thing about how it's toxic masculinity for me to hold a door open for somebody. How it's keeping women down if I hold the door open for somebody. I get to see from a whole bunch of women about how they don't need a man. They don't need a man. One of them, she broke up with her boyfriend like 3 weeks ago, and then she stalked him for 2 weeks. And then last week she was all, "I don't need a man. I don't need a man." And then, of course, this week it's back to, I just need someone to this and I need someone to that. And, it's very wishy-washy, and emotions are like that. You're going to go through different levels of emotions. Every experience is going to have different emotions that you're going to go through. When somebody dies, there's multiple emotions that you're going to go through. When you lose a loved one, when somebody who is important to you leaves, when you are financially friggin' strapped to absolutely nothing, yeah, that's going to have some emotional responses too. Now, of course, this lady doesn't know nothing about the Natalie Bollinger situation. And if she takes a look, is she going to see all of the evidence, both sides, or is she just going to see the slander? Well, of course, she's only going to see the slander. Now, if she wants to send me a message and ask for some information and ask to see both sides, I'm totally down with sending it to her. At the same time, when somebody makes a comparison, maybe you should stop and actually think about the comparison instead of automatically dismissing it offhand. Well, that's not a very professional thing to do, is it? A lot of cops did that too. They dismissed what I was saying out of hand. They just simply did not care. Now, this lady's got 62 viewers, and she's got, let me see, probably several thousand people that, let me scroll down a little bit. I guess that's not working. It says she has, it doesn't say how many subscribers she has. It usually does. Now, of course, she started talking about, someone called Minnie typed, "Can someone delete Sean?" Now, I was I calling people the N-word in there? Was I talking about things that have nothing to do with the subject matter? No. But I said something that they didn't like. I said something that rather than look into it, they just assumed the worst. And when I say they, I'm not talking about black people or white people. I don't know the color of the people that are typing in this. The one who says he's a doctor, I don't know if he's a doctor. And that's the thing there. When two parties aren't willing to sit down and listen to another person's side, when only your words count and only yours matter, there's a major issue there. Now, as far as my situation goes, there's a lot of people that wanted to comment and get involved, and no, their opinions don't matter. The facts matter. The people that they should have been dealt with between is myself and Natalie Bollinger and the police, or myself, Natalie Bollinger, and an arbiter of some sort. But instead, I have to jump through 500 fucking miles of hoops to get not a goddamn thing. Hundreds and hundreds of phone calls to the places I'm told I need to call. And then I stick up for other victims of this as well. But then I'm told by many of those other victims that I don't matter, that I got to go to the back of the bus because I'm not the right color. I got to go to the back of the bus because I'm not the right gender. And if you're not willing to hear it, it's a big difference between me talking about an actual subject here on her channel and getting blocked, and these guys who get on here to be trolls, to be mean, to be little people. And that right there, do I really want this lady to be my doctor? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. She does not have the intelligence to be a doctor. Or rather, the temperament. She may be highly intelligent, but she's not intelligent enough to realize that you got to look at both sides before making a decision. Now, here in the United States, it's become legal to be racist and to be sexist. It has been for, damn near 2 decades. It's perfectly legal to be racist as long as you're racist against white people. It's perfectly acceptable socially to be sexist as long as you are sexist against males. Now, to say that to somebody who is not a white male, well, are they even going to bother to try to look at the facts? Are they going to bother to look at all of the facts? Like a lot of times, when somebody sees somebody who's black walking down the street in Chapel, Nebraska, a lot of those folks think, well, they're black, they must be up to no good. No, they're just people going about their life. But the same thing happens when you're a white male. People look at me, they see a white male. I have this magic privilege that nobody else gets. They completely ignore the fact that I'm different, that I have disabilities, that some of my disabilities are physical and prevent me from doing the things that I am literally trained to do. I worked construction for quite a few years. I did tree cutting for quite a few years. I did lumping. Those of you who have ever worked for Cashway, you know what that is. You're not the driver of the truck. You're the guy who's helping to take them heavy loads down the ramp and get them to where they needed to go. Now, it's just assumed that a homeless person wanted it. Now, we get to see these comparisons that we say these comparisons are so completely wrong if you do it to a black person or a native person or an immigrant person or a Jewish person or a Muslim. But you do it to a homeless person and it's completely fine. Not only is it completely fine and okay, but people will egg it on. We promote so much hatred towards the homeless. So much. We project all of our hatred, all of our insecurities. When we have Our Father who doesn't know how to touch us right. When our Father thinks that it's okay for him to touch us inappropriately. We have to fear what happens if we turn in our fathers, do we not? And you got that anger in you, kind of like Rebecca right now. She's got a lot of anger in her. The messages that she was sending me this morning, a lot of hate and a lot of anger. I also know what it's from. Those of you who listened to it yesterday, you only know a small part. Just because somebody is angry doesn't mean that they are irrational. Sometimes they have tried everything else and it has gotten nowhere. And people want to say those pretty words that you're not supposed to say to a survivor or a victim, like you just need to move on. Did you bother to find out if they can? Did you bother to find out the abuse that they're enduring, how long it's been going on, and whether or not they've been heard? A lot of these folks, the first time that they listen to you, you're explaining to them what's going on, they understand fully, yes, these are the dynamics that we're dealing with. Yes, those are things that are absolutely happening in the world today. You are absolutely correct. And that's the thing with my autism advocate. She said, you know what, Sean, people listen to you until you bring up the police. Could you try not bringing up the police? No, they're an integral part of the situation. You want me to omit essential information? You want me to omit essential evidence? Meanwhile, they can have you arrested and take away all of your evidence and have you put in front of a doctor who they have told that you're schizophrenic. That doctor is not going to listen to you. Now, of course, over time, like when I was in prison, for example, yeah, they realized I was not schizophrenic. They were told that I was schizophrenic. Several of those doctors were pissed off that they were told that I was schizophrenic. And that's the problem with the term mentally ill. The term mentally ill is never a good thing. If you have Tourette's syndrome, you are diagnosed with Tourette's syndrome, and you need to be treated for Tourette's syndrome if it becomes that much of a problem. If you are autistic, same thing. If you treat somebody who's autistic like they have Tourette's syndrome, well, actually, it's not that big of a deal. I have both. But if you treat somebody who's got Tourette's syndrome like they're schizophrenic, that is a big fucking line in the dirt. That is a big fucking difference. In the eyes of the law, there's no line between somebody who's on drugs and somebody who has Tourette's syndrome. There is no line. And of course, when you have a doctor who is not listening to their patient because they have a big fucking head, just like you got judges who don't want to listen because they got a big fucking head, you get a lot of innocent people who are being harmed over quite unprofessional behavior. It's not true because you don't want to hear it. It can't be true because you're offended. You're out of your goddamn minds. Now, of course, with what Rebecca's going through, she has every right to be afraid in her situation. She has every right to panic in her situation. She has every right. She has a friend of hers who's somewhere here in Oregon, and all she wants is a hug from him. Now, don't get me wrong, I'd give her a hug, but that's not going to do her any good. She has not established that kind of a friendship with me. See, I've known her for quite a few years, but Rebecca feeding us and then going about her business, coming back and feeding us, and then going about her business. I basically only saw her when she was feeding us. There's also the fact that while she was feeding people, I only went to Boulder 4 times in that whole time. And the reason for that was for rescuing people. Rescued Osha twice. Now, then there's the idea that, well, you just got to do it yourself. No, my predators didn't do it themselves. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't do it himself. Although he wasn't nearly as effective as Malcolm X. That's probably the one thing that I can be proud of about Nebraska. Malcolm X was born in Nebraska. Now, I don't just fight for the rights of disabled people. I don't just fight for the rights of homeless people. I do fight for the rights of black people, despite the fact that I'm not black. Because I do see the racism. I do fight for the rights of women, despite the fact that I'm not a woman. Despite the fact that I am victimized by black people and women. The majority of my predators were not black people. I would have to say that the majority of my predators have been women, although the majority of my physical abusers have been men. And all of the people who abused me sexually were men. Although technically I could consider what that woman in Boulder did by sticking her hand down my pants while I was sleeping, I could consider that sexual assault. And also with Rayanne Ingersoll rubbing up and touching on me and all of that, I could consider that sexual assault. And Lan Engeline grabbing my hand and putting it on her chest, I could also consider sexual assault. And legally, those are actually all three considered sexual assault. Now, the first person, the woman who stuck her hand down my pants, I didn't know if it was a squirrel, if it was a raccoon. What I knew is something was rooting around in my pants, and I twisted real fast to get away from it. Turned out her wrist was stuck in my belt, and she broke her wrist trying to touch my... Don't do that to somebody who's sleeping. That's rape, literally, okay? Do not molest people in their sleep. I'm not okay with it. Now, the situation with Lana Engeline, I was having an emotional issue. I was crying. I was distraught. I needed somebody to listen. The situation with Natalie was completely fucked. And she thought that sex was going to be the fix for it. A lot of people throw that at me. They're like, Schwartz, you just need to get laid. Sean, you just need to get laid. You just need to get... Do you really think that getting laid is going to fix these problems? Is getting laid going to allow me an honest day in court? Is getting laid going to fix my credit? Is getting laid going to net me enough money to get myself into a place? Because my disability money is not enough for renting a place, let alone first month's and last month's deposit. Now, none of this is this doctor's fault, not even a little bit of it. Not even a tiny bit of it is this doctor's fault. Now, of course, I had quite a bit to add to the conversation, especially since it's a topic that I know quite a bit about. I also grew up in the system starting at age 4. Was I in the system at age 4 because I was some sort of terrible fucking drug addict? No, I was a 4-year-old dumbass. I was put in the system because my dad got busted with 38 counts of cocaine possession with intent to sell, and my mom was in and out of court-appointed rehab also for cocaine. My predators are dangerous, even if you want to pretend that they don't exist. These people who are witnesses, whose conversations are on my YouTube channel here, actual conversations with them. You can hear their own voices, them saying these things in their own words. But it's easier just to pretend that I'm crazy, isn't it? It's easier helps to appease your mind, especially those of you who harass me and threaten me and have stalked me in real life. It makes you feel better, doesn't it? Well, of course it does. Now, I'm not going to go saying that this lady is a horrible person because she doesn't want to hear points of view that are different from hers or experiences that are different from hers. She doesn't want to stop to actually analyze the situation. Yes, calling someone mentally ill is worse than calling them the N word because the N word is not going to discredit them outright. The moment you call somebody mentally ill, you have cast a shadow of doubt on everything that they say, as well as the fear that they might be unstable. Unstable means to you that they're going to get violent with you, and so on and so forth. And many of these things that we see projected onto mentally ill people, we get to see every day that women are not only engaging in these actions, they're being encouraged and cheered on for committing these actions. These actions that you want to project onto the mentally ill. Destruction of property, manipulation. These are associated with the mentally ill. Get violent, frequently violent, being narcissistic, trying to blame your victims. And we get to have the pleasure of TikTok, don't we? With hundreds of clones of this exact same female type. Not all women are like that. Just like not all men are rapists. Just like not all Jews are out to steal your money. Just like not all Mexicans want to steal your bike. Just like not every single Hispanic person that you meet is Mexican. I understand your stereotypes. I understand your bias. I understand your superiority complex. I totally do. You busted your ass to go through college. You busted your ass to make sure that you got the math right and that you passed those tests, that you know the tibia from the fibia. Or if you're a psychologist, I guess you really didn't learn most of that stuff, did you? But you learned about the drugs. You learned about the medications. You learned how to write a prescription. But the thing that doctors are missing today is the ability to listen to their patients. And the more money becomes the only thing that they care about, the less they're going to listen. If you got the right insurance, they'll listen. If you got family that goes in there with you, they'll listen. But if the cops that you're trying to turn in take you to the hospital and tell the hospital that you're schizophrenic, there's not a goddamn thing you can do about it. Meanwhile, Marcia Estrada, she's on my channel as well, admitting that I'm not schizophrenic, that I am autistic, that I do have PTSD. She says I'm hypervigilant. That's because of long-term abuse. And a lot of people don't want to look at the fact that when you look at abuse and you look at autism, you notice that most of the traits are the same. Most of the reactions are the same. On paper, anyway. In real life, we're all different, ain't we? That's right, we truly are. Are we embracing our differences? We were taught in the 1980s that we're to be tolerant, that other people are people too. Right? So, I mean, I grew up not being racist. Meanwhile, I'm surrounded by people who hate me because I'm white at that point in time. But I never adopted that racist crap, ever. I don't owe it to you to play racist just because you're black. I don't owe it to you to call you the N word because you're looking for a fight and you want to scream at me over and over, call me the N word. I know you want to. I know you want to. I dare you. Call me the N word. I don't owe it to you. And how do you know I want to? Do I get to just assume your intent? Because at that point, you're making your intent loud and clear. I'm also making my intent loud and clear. I don't want to call anybody that, and I'm not going to. No law says that I have to be racist because of the color of my skin. The term mentally ill has been used as an excuse to deny me my rights as a human being, to deny me the right to show evidence, to deny me the right to turn in my predators, to deny me the rights to life, liberty, and, of course, the pursuit of happiness. Now, anyone can pursue happiness, but this isn't a life, and I sure as hell can't call it liberty. When I look at what this country was founded on, the Revolutionary War, and I look at what we're going through today, I'm not sure we're any better off. I really am not. Because the things that have happened to me today, in 1776, they would have shot you for less. In 1776, they would have killed you over a tax stamp. And that don't matter what color you are. Now, should I bash this doctor as if she's doing this with evil intent? Absolutely not. She's talking about subjects that people care about, things that people want to talk about. She's trying to engage with her audience. Hell, she's even got it all set up so that people can go right there and click on her stuff and pay her money for talking at any point in time. It says for inquiries or requests, contact me at, and it's got all of her information there. It's got her phone number on there. To send products for review and possible sponsorship. Oh, she's in Georgia. Cash App donations accepted, and become a certified DIAM today, and join this channel to get access perks. My channel's free. There's no advertisements here. I'm not out to make a profit. Now, if I had the ability and the knowledge to set it up so that I could make a little bit of money off of it, just enough to live on, I might consider it. But then again, why not just make a fundraiser at that point? Why not just make a fundraiser and post it in the links and just call that good? Because I'm not trying to make a profit. I'm trying to fight for equal rights. And that's not what we're living today. We got victims of the same people going at each other's throats instead of their predators. And just like any other predator, most predators were victims at one point. And most predators are not going to walk into a crowd. And I'm sure you guys have stories, and I've met people that are this crazy in the head to walk into a room with 20 people and start a fight. But most of the time, predators are not going to do that. Most of the time, they're going to find somebody who's alone, somebody who's got something about them that will make it easier to victimize them. Maybe they have a twitch. If they've got a twitch, they might have Tourette syndrome. They might have cerebral palsy. They might have brain damage. They might have gotten hit in the head just way too fucking hard. They might be autistic and stimming. But if you're autistic and stimming, even just standing there could get you shot. If you have Tourette syndrome and your body isn't moving right because you have a electrical impulse problem, you could get shot. Matter of fact, there's about 60 million black people in America in 2019 and about 60 million disabled people in 2019. 51% of those killed by police in 2019 were disabled. 22% was black. Now, does that come across to some of you as me saying it's okay that those black people were killed? Because absolutely not. It is just as wrong to kill a black person as it is to kill a disabled person. But according to the law, the homeless don't get the same rights. According to the law, you can't commit a hate crime against the homeless. That's why there's more hate crimes against the homeless than all other hate crimes combined in the United States times 5. Take all of the black people in America and all of the Asians in America, all of them. Take all of the immigrants in America, all of them, every single one, and you take all of the hate crimes committed against all of them, and you count every single one, there are more than 5 times as many hate crimes as all of those combined against the homeless. But the homeless don't have a protected status. We're also the only ones you can fight for if you actually care about equality. Homelessness does not know a skin color. Homelessness does not know a gender. Homelessness does not recognize a nation of origin. Homelessness does not care about your religion. If you care about equal rights, you will fight for homeless rights. If you are not fighting for homeless rights, you are racist, you are sexist. And that is a fact, not an opinion. Merry Christmas, people.